Okay, so here we go.
Okay, so as I said, we plan all of the special ed family resource sessions in conjunction with the Bellevue Special Needs PTA. And typically we like to have at least one member join us, but I think tonight, for scheduling reasons, we don't have Lisa or Tracy with us, but they're both fantastic. And we love planning sessions with their support and ideas and expertise as parents of children with special needs in the school district. So Jared put the QR code if you have your phone and you want to scan that to get to their website. And then I will also put their website in the chat if that works better for you. I do know they meet monthly, and then they also host a different variety of speakers and provide supports to lots of different families with kids with special needs. So we are grateful to them. And if you're interested in joining the Bellevue Special Needs PTA, you can find information on how to do so in the chat. And without further ado, I will turn it over to...
You've kind of done that part. Is there anything else you've done?
Oh,
don't need to worry about bathrooms.
Bathrooms are in your homes. Oh yeah, for translation services, since we're not in person tonight, for Teams, you can just, if you have a smartphone, you can go to Google Translate. Does a really nice job picking up the speaker's voice and going translating to the language you need. You could also do captions on your own device. And towards the end, I'm going to post a link to gather your feedback about this session, because we take feedback very seriously. And in fact, that's why we're doing this session tonight, is because a lot of families gave feedback last year that they loved the information Jared had to offer, and you guys wanted more, kind of like more the next step. So please take a minute towards the end to fill out that feedback. I think that's it. There's more. Please provide your email addresses. Yes, I think Gita put this for us, so we can send your materials from tonight's presentation. So we will post it on the district website, but also if you want a copy directly to your email, you can go ahead and pop your email in the chat. I will collect all of those and we can send them out to you tomorrow or Monday, and we will not release your emails in any other capacity. They will just be used for that purpose.
And oops, I'm gonna drop this link here in the chat as well, so that you can have the contents of this presentation. And I have a QR code, so we're doing a multimodal approach here. So I have a bunch of handouts, and that's the QR code, but I don't know if either way how you want to do that, but there's a PDF of this presentation. There's one from Tuesday nights if you're interested, and then there's a bunch of different handouts in there as well.
Great.
Oh,
there's Tracy.
Tracy. Okay.
Let's see if she wants to
say anything. Yeah.
Hey Tracy, we just got done talking about the Bellevue Special Needs PTA. And I did drop that website in the chat too. Did you want to, sorry, I know you just got in. Did you want to say anything before we get started?
No, I say hi. Thank you all for putting this on. Thank you for plugging our PTA. Hi, Jen's helper. And thank you all for coming. We hope to keep these up, partnering with the district to do this and bring you more good information. So enjoy the training or the discussion.
Thank you, Tracy. And real quick, Tracy, when's your next PTA meeting?
It will not be till January, probably the end of January. So yes.
All right, Jared, I think that's it. Tracy, thank you for that information.
Great. Well, Adria, do you want to introduce yourself first, and then I'll go next?
Sure, thank you. So my name is Adria Haugen. I'm the behavioral health coordinator for the district. So I'm new to Bellevue School District this year. In my previous position, I was a special education teacher for 15 years. So really excited to join Bellevue School District. And what I get to do is oversee the supports that are in place, all the adults that are supporting our students in special education who have special needs with behavior. So I'm here to hear everybody's concerns and questions and learn more about your needs. So thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks, Adria. So I'm Jared Taylor. My official title is Coordinator of Behavioral and Mental Health Services, which I like to tell people is completely made up title. They asked me what do you want to be called, and you have to be some sort of coordinator. So I was like, okay, well, we'll just make that up. So my job really is I lead the mental health assistance team primarily at the at the secondary level, middle, high school, and then also at the elementary as well. I've been in the district about 27 years. Started off as a school psychologist, and then did some work. I got tired of writing reports. Love working with kids and families. Tired of reports writing. And I went to work as a behavior intervention specialist for about 17 years, and then I switched to doing more mental health, but also with behavior support on the gen ed side as well. So that's kind of my background. This stuff is a passion of mine. I love talking about this, so I'll try and keep it somewhat succinct as I can talk about a lot of stuff. So a couple of just of expectations. Please ask questions. The best way to learn is to just ask questions. This is for you. And if you have specific questions, feel free to either type them in the chat or raise your hand on the Teams thing, and I'd be happy to address your question. As I think Jen said, just to reiterate, we are recording, so just make sure that the questions are not too specific around your child or things like that, unless you're comfortable sharing more information. Also, if the question is a little bit more complex or something that's more directly personal, I'd be happy to talk. It sounds like Adria would be as well. Either through email, we could connect through email and set up a time to talk, or try some other approach. But yeah, please ask questions. Don't have to worry about side conversations, is what I do in person. Also, there's a lot of information. It's hard to know exactly how much information to present. So I don't expect everyone to know or remember kind of all the concepts. I will try and highlight certain things that I think are extremely important. I do that. And so because of that, you might kind of say, well, you might experience some like feelings of like, well, I want more, or we didn't go over this or all of that. Again, happy to do more of these and answer further questions if you have concerns. I also love humor. Try to have things be a bit fun, because some of this is really hard as well. So speaking of which, I just saw this picture and I just loved it. I was like, that's the raccoon that's living his best life. So thought that was good. So things that we're gonna talk about today is really a lot about anxiety, and even though it's titled strategies to kind of help student or help behavior and things like that and management. Anxiety is primarily one of the driving forces of a lot of behavior challenges and other issues. And it affects students that have observable outward behaviors, but also we have a lot of students that have anxiety that goes unnoticed as well. We'll talk a little bit about prevalences just to kind of put us on some basic information, get us some basic information. We'll talk about causes, and then I really want to focus more on identification at home and school, and what are some strategies that can be done at home, school, and the community. So I just want to kind of, why are we talking about anxiety? It's huge. It really has a big factor in a lot of issues that we have. Kids with anxiety often show more behavioral and academic, even if they don't show behavioral concerns. Academic challenges definitely come up, avoidance of work, avoidance of school, things like that. Even though we don't really suspend students in Bellevue School District, we found that it actually creates dropouts more so than it does help change behavior. So we've tried to do different disciplinary procedures, but anxiety definitely affects, dropping out of school, things like that. And obviously, if we don't, support students with their anxiety needs early on, it can lead to lots of challenges later on in life, such as addiction, suicide, incarceration, relationship strife, and problems with employment. Um, just again, some basic rates. These are pre-pandemic. The bottom bullet there, the BSD BIMAS 2 results. BIMAS 2 is a tool that we use to assess. It's a screening tool that we use to assess students' well-being. And what we found is in district, about 35 to 55%, depending upon the population of students, have reported elevated levels of anxiety and depression. So pretty high. Not diagnosed with anxiety and depression, but showed kind of elevated signs of that as well. Generally, the general rate before the pandemic was about 20% of students, or all children, showed some sort of mental health challenges as well. The other thing is that schools and the community has really struggled with service delivery models as well. We've gotten better post-pandemic because I think people have realized the need for mental health supports, but it's still a challenge. So kind of going back to some grounding stuff is like when we're talking about anxiety, I want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page of what I'm talking about, because it anxiety is, everybody knows generally kind of what it is, but how do we define it necessarily? Because I think it's a good idea to kind of define, because there's a couple things in here. It's really, anxiety is really just intense feelings of fear, nervousness, or tenseness. And it's a body response essentially. And it's also a perception, the perceptions of sense of danger or not being able to meet the demands of the situation. And so I think that's really important, is that two people can have a similar experience, being, online, having to manage several kids at the same time, feed them dinner, all these things while, trying to do a presentation or something like that. And one person can be totally fine with that. The other person can be totally stressed. So part of it is it's a perception of the person's ability to manage the demands of the situation as well. Oftentimes anxiety is diffuse and it's hard to kind of put it in words sometimes. Sometimes it's pretty obvious, like this is stressing me out, but sometimes people don't have always the words or the understanding of what is stressing them. Or they may be experienced to high levels of stress in their life. So when people ask them, well, you're stressed, but well, I don't know, nothing. I'm fine, that type of thing. So part of it also is just learning to recognize kind of what is stress and what it looks like as well. I differentiate worry from anxiety because worry is really focusing in on the thoughts. It's often about the object or the kind of situation that causes the stress or anxiety. It's often very specific. It just like I didn't mention this, but anxiety is normal and helpful at times. Often when I'm in person, I ask people kind of what is it, how is it helpful, and usually the response is it helps motivate us to do certain things. If I don't go to work on time, I might get reprimanded, and I don't want to be reprimanded. Or if I don't go to work, I might not make money, and if I don't make money, I can't pay my bills. So there's some anxiety associated with that. So, or for students, if I don't study for a test, then I might get a poor grade, and if I don't get a poor grade, I might not be able to do all the things that I want to do, either immediately because of parental conditions, or uh, school wise later on, those types of things. So anxiety can be very normal in prompting us to do things. And down with worry, it's also helpful because it can help us for preparing and planning as well. So, I suspect Thanksgiving is coming up. And I suspect some people are really worrying about Thanksgiving and already starting lists and things like that because they want to make sure Thanksgiving is well prepared. So that's a form of anxiety that can be very helpful. There's a couple of analogies that I want to briefly talk about that kind of help also explain it and give a Now, I'll reference these a few times during the presentation. And the first one, we use these with kids. A lot. The first one is the faulty smoke detector analogy, and that our brain is kind of parts of our brain, particularly the limbic system, all those areas of our brain are meant to detect fear. They're part of our reptilian brain, kind of base brain, and they're really looking at fight or flight and what's going to harm us and what's going to be safe. And the frontal lobe part of our brain is the one that interprets the actual signals from the limbic system. And sometimes the part of the brain, the middle part of the brain, sends a warning signal. And just like with a smoke alarm that detects maybe water or maybe smoke coming from the stove, if you've singed something, or where there's not really a fire, it will go off. And a good fire alarm can kind of tamp that down or recognize or accommodate towards these types of issues. In the brain, what happens is that the frontal lobe often interprets the signals and will, if it really has experienced, issues, and it's real fear, real threat, then it will kind of motivate the body to kind of run, fight, or freeze. But in some cases, it will detect emergencies or threats that actually aren't there, because they've maybe experienced those in the past. And so it's kind of that mismatch between the two brains. The next analogy that I like to use is the anxiety monster, and I'm a fan of Stranger Things, so I have my monsters there. And the analogy basically is that it's fed by fear. And what I mean by that is that the second bullet there, avoidance and escape. So running away from fearful situations or running away from your fear actually makes it bigger and worse. There's actually a disorder called agoraphobia, where oftentimes people can't go anywhere. They can't leave their house because everything, their monster has grown so big that they basically can't do anything. And so they stay in their house. And really the only way to tame it is to stand up to it. And in psychology terms, there's an old term for that, standing up to it, and there's a newer term. Systematic desensitization is the old term. So if you've been around a while, you may have heard that. And the new one is kind of exposure therapy. And basically what happens in exposure therapy is that if you expose yourself to lower levels of the perceived threat, so things that are like thinking about or imagining a difficult situation rather than actually experiencing it, our body, may get elevated, but our autonomic nervous system can't handle being activated for very long. And so it starts to accommodate to that. And over time, the more exposure you get, the less reactive our nervous system becomes to those stimuli as well. So that's kind of the general theory. And this is kind of what we use to look at what we call stress cycle, and this is the activation part. So when we get into kind of a fear situation or high level of anxiety, we actually start to get into fight, flight, or freeze. And normally there's a baseline, where everybody is breathing fine, their heart rate's normal, they're able to focus, but something might trigger that. Whether it's for a student walking in the hall and seeing someone that they don't like, whether it's a teacher reprimanding them, whether it's getting a failing grade on a test, or it's not a great grade on a test, or if it's something more horrific, seeing an abuser or something like that you've run into, that can trigger a autonomic nervous system response and put people into kind of the alarm phase. And in the alarm phase, what happens is the blood literally goes away from the brain. And so the brain is not able to, and it mobilizes into like motor cortex areas that are kind of for mobilizing for running, fighting, or basically freezing, essentially. Some people freeze. It's really just trying to get us away from the perceived threat. So rational thinking kind of goes out the window at that point. It's people get tunnel vision, they focus in on one thing only. So reasoning with people in that phase is really hard. And so if you've ever tried to reason with a 3-year-old in a tantrum, it's pretty darn hard. So,
I was just going to say, Jared, that
yeah.
I really like reading work by Dr. Bruce Perry. And recently I read that some of the research shows that when people go into that alarm, when they're extremely stressed, that their actual IQ drops on average by 20 points. So it makes me think about when I've been escalated or kind of in those arguments, you're not thinking as rationally as you would be when you're calm.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, if you've ever been in an argument with friend, spouse, partner, family member, coworker, boss, your arguments sometimes, if you're activated, go out the window. And then afterwards you think about, oh, I could have said this, and this. So yeah, that's a good point. Oh wait, I forgot to talk about exhaustion. So because the alarm phase, and it's jagged up there because it's not always linear, it means that sometimes kids calm down for a while and then something can trigger them again. Same thing for us. We might be calm for a while and then we might see something or think of something that again triggers our emotional response. But during that phase, our bodies expend a lot of energy, tons of energy. And so we have to go through a recuperation phase or exhaustion phase. And I call this the kind of curl up on the couch with a blanket and watching, bad reality TV time. For adults, for kids, it might be putting a hood over head, putting a head on a desk, and putting music in, and just not responding, that type of thing. And we need to honor that, because if you sometimes push people to an exhaustion phase, it can lead to further mental health challenges or sometimes spike people back up into the alarm phase. So let me jump back just one more time. Sorry, keep jumping back and forth. I show you this because I think that this is something that can happen to our kids very easily. And sometimes the stress cycle is not an outward facing thing, meaning that the behaviors in the alarm phase are not readily available. But if you have teens at all, I'm sure you've seen the alarm phase where it's door slamming, it's huffing off, it's walking away from you, refusing to talk to you, stonewalling, all of those things as well. So another kind of model that we use, there's several different models of anxiety, but this one is helpful for a lot of the work that we do. It's the cognitive behavioral model, or it's cognitive behavioral therapy is the approach. But in this, there's 3 parts of the triangle, and thoughts, behaviors, and feelings, and each are distinct, but each can have an effect on the other. So if I'm thinking a certain way, that might trigger certain feelings. So if I'm thinking about a traumatic event, when a teacher or my parent yelled at me when I was 10 years old, or hit me or something like that, that might trigger feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, fear, all these things. And my behaviors might be to withdraw from other people as well. Just like having negative feelings, just waking up feeling bad for no reason can lead to negative thoughts. Like, I don't want to go to school today. I don't want to go to work today. And then that can lead to not actually doing those types of things. Sometimes behaviors, just repetitive behavior, sometimes thoughts can be automatic. Or let me rephrase that. The thoughts, there aren't many thoughts. And so sometimes the behaviors that we do, the routines that we do, can lead to feelings and thoughts as well. When you start to reflect on the behaviors that are happening. I'm trying to think of some examples, but that one's a little bit harder. What's important in this one, and important in kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, is that 2 things that are really important. Cognitive distortions. These are thoughts that I consider unhelpful, or thinking errors. And sometimes there's a grain of truth in them. However, they tend to be overemphasized or bigger than the reality is. There's different kind of categories of cognitive distortions, such as black and white thinking, where It's either one way or the other. There's no gray. So, you know, all my teachers hate me is a great example of black and white thinking. And that's obviously not usually true. I mean, there have been occasions, yes, but most teachers don't. You know, they may not like the behaviors, but they often like the kids. Or I'm trying to think of some other ones, some other thinkings. Yeah, it's usually all or nothing types of thinking. The other one is the reinforcement, and that goes kind of back with the anxiety monster. Is that the behaviors and often will reinforce the thoughts and the feelings as well. So if somebody escapes from a anxiety provoking situation or avoids it, then the next time that situation comes up or that trigger comes up for the person, they're going to have the same thoughts and feelings as well, and they might engage in the same behavior. Let me stop there. Is any kind of questions? I've been going quite a bit here. I'll stop just for a comprehension check or just see what's coming up for people. Nothing yet? Okay, we'll keep going. Feel free to put anything in the chat if you want. So these are some more signs. So this goes into the feelings a little bit more deeper. You know, these are often physiologic feelings, but you know, things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritability, you know, all of those can be considered feelings, but these are kind of definitely really more body experiences. You know, nausea and stomach aches and neck aches, headaches, all are really strong signs that don't have an organic cause like migraines or illness or something like that, or an injury. You know, all of those definitely stress can cause those types of issues. And then just some thoughts and the behaviors there. Worrying too much about bad things happening, constant thoughts or images of bad things, dangers everywhere, kind of irrational thoughts. A lot of behaviors that we see as avoiding situations, people or things. So a lot of social situations. You know, common one is fear of flying, things like that. Trying to avoid memories, certain memories. Reassurance seeking or clinging to safe people, refusing to leave them. Those are real common. For younger kids, temper tantrums. For older kids, outbursts tend to happen more. Repetitive rituals. There's a disorder called obsessive compulsive disorder, where people will perform rituals to try and get rid of the anxiety or the worry about some bad things happening. And we often do see sometimes physical aggression or oppositional behaviors from kids. Kids in the classroom, in the schools, we often see, you know, kids are anxious about doing schoolwork because maybe schoolwork is really hard for them, or the assignment's hard, or teachers haven't provided enough accommodations or support around the work. And so when asked to do that, kids will refuse. So I would say in the elementary and well, in most areas, I would say, I don't know, 75 to 85% of challenging behaviors are because teachers present work that is hard for the kids to do and they refuse to do it. And then the behavior they refuse and they start to engage in other behaviors that may be attention seeking or things like that.
And then I just want to say a lot of those behaviors then reinforce their irrational thinking. So
Exactly.
If they already think I can't do this schoolwork and then they have some anxiety that's getting in the way, then that just reinforces their own thoughts.
So how to manage go ahead. Yeah,
oh, yep,
I saw
you
it.
see that? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I do see that. Yeah, how to manage repetitive self-talk. Are these like perseverating on negative self-talk? I'm assuming. If you want to just Sujata, I think is hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. If it's negative self-talk, we're definitely going to talk about how to change that as well. I think that there's ways of kind of inserting different approaches, such as relaxation strategies. Distraction is a great tool to kind of manage repetitive self-talk or negative talk towards about oneself. So hold that thought. If I don't answer it completely, please bring up your question again, but I will definitely get to that. Definitely get to that. So these are some anxiety problems that might occur at home for teens. Most common ones are bedtime issues, sleeping issues, somatic complaints like stomach aches, headaches, back aches, neck aches, things like that. Refusing to go to school as well. Excessive device use, gaming, a lot of gaming, a lot of social media obsessions, having extremely high expectations of oneself, hiding and staying in the room, not participating in family events. All of those are kind of indications of potential issues with anxiety. So anxiety problems at school, what we often see, big one is school refusal, not wanting to go to school. I work with a lot of students that have school refusal. Shouting at others, inappropriate language, refusal to complete assigned work, non-compliance, poor grades, a lot of visits to nurses or a counselor, disengagement from classroom activities and interactions. Some of these out here are kind of outward behaviors, but we do see a lot of kids that have more internalizing challenges, who may be doing okay grade wise and school wise, but sometimes we do see behaviors of disengagement and just kind of being quiet, or kind of trying to blend in with the woodwork or the background as well. Sometimes we get asked, like, when is anxiety a problem? And really there's kind of 4 areas that psychologists and counselors and social workers look at. And it's when there's a pattern of behavior. It usually lasts more than 5 to 6, 7 months, something like that. And it really affects the academic and or vocational functioning of the student. One or more of these, social functioning, how they're interacting with friends and peers, their physical health, if they're losing a lot of weight, not eating, if they're not sleeping, a lot of illnesses, things like that. And then if it's really affecting their leisure time, so they're not enjoying their time, or they're not spending much time with that, or they're refusing to play with or hang out with friends, things like that. It really is. Most behaviors on a spectrum, but there are definitely some tools that can be used to kind of find out, where that student is on that spectrum of behaviors as well. And we all have, positive and negative challenges. And the other thing is that there's also a lot of culturally bound behaviors that could be seen as more maladaptive in some areas and less adaptive or more adaptive in other areas. So that's kind of important to note, and those are things that we definitely take into consideration. I'm just going to show these and just briefly describe them. I'm not going to go into detail too much because I want to get more to the other parts of this discussion. So there's the most common anxiety disorders for teenagers really is general anxiety disorder, social anxiety, and maybe OCD or PTSD. Those are really common. Generalized anxiety disorder is really just being anxious and nervous about a lot of different things in life. It's not really specific. Specific phobia is really like fear of spiders or fear of flying, or it's very focused on a specific activity or object or person or something like that. Whereas generalized, it's kind of all over the place as well. Social anxiety disorder is pretty straightforward. Kids are afraid to be in social situations, or adults as well. So they often are quiet, will avoid social environments, are home a lot, maybe online or gaming, but often not out there. Yeah, okay, let's go on to the next thing here. Just briefly, there's a lot of different potential causes for anxiety. A lot of it comes down to just genetics and body chemistry. It's definitely twin studies that have shown that identical twins reared apart in different family environments who are predisposed to anxiety show anxiety. So it's not always the parent's fault, so to speak. We often wonder that. And brain body chemistry, temperament is something that a lot of kids or people are born with. It's based on genetics as well. There's multiple different traits, you know, flexibility, approach, and approach. General nibs. I'm trying to remember all the different temperaments, but there's a whole bunch that babies will show very quickly when they haven't had a lot of socialized training. They've measured kind of babies' responses to novel situations, and some babies will approach, and some will kind of shy away, and so they've been able to figure that out. Life situations and traumas definitely can cause anxiety, depression, things like that. Adverse childhood events is something that's real. Maybe people might have heard of as there's ACEs. There's a lot of study. Things like deaths, abuse, substance abuse, difficult relationships, sometimes even positive things like change in marital status, positive marital status, things like that can cause stress. And then lastly, the reinforcement model, which I kind of it's antecedents, behaviors, and consequence, but it's kind of like what I was talking about with the anxiety monster. All right, so let's talk about how to help. So as I said, the most common approach there is exposure. We've got extreme exposure there with our skydiving cat, poor cat. I love cats, so normally I have more cats in my presentations than this one. But anyway, exposure is, and I'll show an example kind of what a fear ladder is in a little bit. But fear ladder is really a stepping up of the intensity of the exposure. So you start really small. It might be, like I said, imagining. So like being afraid of going to school. It might be rather than going to school, going to the classroom. For a student that's really afraid of school, it might be just being at home, closing your eyes, thinking about being at school, picturing school. That might be the exposure activity to start off with. And then once the student is able to do that on a consistent basis while managing their emotions, then it might be, getting into the car and driving by the school might be the next exposure. Once they're mastering that, it might be stopping in the parking lot and hanging out in the parking lot for a little bit of the school. And then you could start going into they could start getting out of the car. You could kind of dissect this down into a lot of different ways till eventually you get the student in the classroom as well. Other treatments, education, or we call it psychoeducation, is really important. It provides information about anxiety or whatever kind of mental health challenge is, and there's the concept is that it's the more you can name it, or you can name it, you have to name it. You can, excuse me, if you can name it, then you can tame it, essentially. And essentially, what it helps is it provides hope for a lot of kids and people that, hey, I'm not the only one that has experienced these issues. Sometimes feeling of anxiety and depression is very isolating, especially if they have social phobia. They're not talking to people who have similar experiences, and so it's really it leads to feelings of hopelessness. So really education is basically saying that there is treatment, you can get better, and here's what it takes to do that. Really important, and this goes back to the Jared. I do love cats, Jen. Going back to the repetitive self-talk, the relaxation and motion regulation, those are some very specific skills that we teach. And I'll show you a little bit more about those. And then I've talked briefly about cognitive distortions, but cognitive reframing is really changing those negative thoughts as well. Let's see, my child has a hard time naming his emotions. He has alexithymia. I have not heard of that. That's a new one to me. Do you mind saying a little bit, or maybe Adria, do you mind looking that up a little bit and seeing? Yeah, I'd be happy to. I may not have any responses to that. I'm not sure. That's new to me.
Yeah, let me look it up.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, education. I think I went into this a little bit. It's done in an age and a developmentally appropriate way. It's meant to really destigmatize the anxiety and talk about treatment options, difficulty identifying and naming emotions. Yeah. Um, it might be. We're going to talk a little bit about that. There are a lot of kids actually, just in younger kids in particular, but also students even sometimes on the spectrum, who have real challenges with identifying emotions, that introspection, the metacognitive abilities of kind of thinking about your own thinking or thinking about yourself. What I try to do with that is really focus on the physical sensations, like do like body scans of like what does your stomach feel like, or what does your neck feel like? Can you think about that? Some kids can do it, some kids can't. It takes kind of a real skilled therapist to really help students with that. Because sometimes if emotions are there, but the teen can't identify those emotions, we have to look at other things, either behaviors that are happening, or physical manifestations of it, such as stomach aches, headaches, neck, sweating, heavy breathing or shallow breathing, you know, blinking, things like that. I often, I'm going to talk about a subjective units of distress. I'm not sure. It might help. It might not. I'm not sure, but I'll say name that, or I'll talk about that in a minute, and that might be one way of kind of helping to identify. Um, with young kids, we don't go too much into the there's lots of the emotion wheels. There's lots of different kind of names for emotions, but I tend to, with younger kids or students on the spectrum, I tend to stick to happy, sad, angry, basic ones, to kind of help, and then we try and expand that as much as possible. So
I've done something like a mood or feelings thermometer can help identify how they're feeling as well, and looking at it as a range or a spectrum.
that's it right there. Thanks for previewing that. These are they're also called thermometers. We use in school, we call them thermometers. In the research research, they use subjective units of distress because we have to name things really easily, don't we? Or SUDS essentially, and because it can be used for a lot of different things, like pain. Could be used for anger. It could be used for anxiety, things like that. So what I sometimes do is work with students, and I have had a lot of students who really don't understand this. Even they may even say, "Well, I'm at a 10 always," and it's like, "Well, you're talking to me right now, and you may be upset, but you're talking to me. That's not a 10." I do that gently. I don't confront them directly. But usually, around a 6 or a 7 is when kids start to lose their cognitive abilities. As Adria was saying, the IQ goes down significantly around that. Um, I find this, with younger kids, I usually use a 3-point scale. There's a tool called zones of regulation, and it really is red, green, and yellow. So green is good, yellow is maybe a little bit bad, and red is really bad. So it depends on the cognitive abilities and abilities of the student. But for most teenagers, or a lot of teenagers, even with some with cognitive challenges, this type of scale works pretty well. Um, so also going back to the negative thinking, I think the question earlier was, what was it? Repetitive self-talk, or negative. So these are some positive. Oops. These are the types of negative thinking traps here. There's personalization, all of these perfectionists. I have to do everything right. Mind reading is I know what you're going to say, I know how you're going to feel, even when you don't really know. Blaming. These are some positives. Like I can do it. I did it the last time. I can do it again. Anxiety is not dangerous. Practice makes it easier. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. I'll get through it and facing my fear, or you know what, I'm good enough. People like me, that type of thing. This can be really helpful. This is also really important, and what I try to tell staff that I work with and parents is that when you teach relaxation and emotional regulation skills, when the child is having the meltdown, is not the time to teach. You have to teach them when they're in their kind of they're relaxed, they're calm. Um, it really helps, and I think I mentioned the other night is that my youngest daughter has had some anxiety challenges when she was younger, and she would have trouble going to bed. And so even when she wasn't upset, we would do progressive relaxation with her at night. We call it happy toes is what we called it, where I'd have her start at her toes and flex her toes and wiggle them and then relax them, and then we'd start with her ankle and then kind of work her way up to the top of her head type of thing. And usually by the end of that, she was almost sound asleep. And so that was one approach. We also used to use deep breathing. And so when a student, or when she, or even as another student I work with, is really in kind of a panic attack, I will almost often just kind of say, hey, let's breathe together. Or not let's, we're breathing together. Because if you say let's, then that allows them to say, no, I don't want to. So I just say, and so what I'll do is I'll model it for them. I'll actually start breathing for them when they're in a panic attack, that type of thing. And that is extremely helpful. It's kind of a term called grounding, where you can kind of orient them to the here and now. So when they start to come out of it, you can say, what do you see in the room? What's going on right now? What am I doing? Those types of things. You kind of orient them to the here and now. I think what else? Distraction is a great tool as well. Use that a lot in schools. Part of watching, cat videos or, TikToks or memes or things like that. All of those can be very helpful to reduce anxiety and stress in the moment. Some more distraction here. I'm already jumping ahead here. So, taking a walk, coloring, reading, drawing, all these things can be preferred. When it comes to school, some of these can be done as long as we work with the school counselor and teachers to make sure that they know that these are coping strategies for when a student is upset. Square breathing is a great one. Blowing out the candle or blowing out the birthday cake and smelling the flowers is another one. With exposure, again, these are kind of baby steps, and we use the SUDS measures to kind of determine how a student is doing over time and when to shift to the next exposure activity. And eventually the ratings will go down. So I might say to a student, hey, we're going to go think about walking down to your classroom. What is your SUDS rating on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, it's an 8 right now. Okay, that's pretty high. So let's do some deep breathing. We'll do some visual imagery. We'll do some stuff. Okay, after we do that, it might be down to a 6. Okay, 6 still pretty high, but it's better. So let's give it a try. And when I work with students, and my team works with students that have anxiety, we never try to push the student too far. We try to make sure that they are able to engage in the activity, because if we push them too far, they're going to escape and avoid, and then we've just reinforced their avoidance behavior, and we've kind of set ourselves back. So we don't want to throw kids into the deep end of the water. We want to kind of use those baby steps as well. And so what we do is we do before and oftentimes after the exposure, the anxiety goes way down because they feel a sense of relief that it's over. And what you'll see in there is the exposure 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 4, is that the more we do this, the initial rating tends to go down. pretty common. If it doesn't, then as a therapist, then my job would be to figure out how we can break the exposure down into something more easier for them to do. But once they've had that kind of low exposure, rating on number 4, that's when we start to move to the next step. But here's another example of a fear letter. This is an actual one that I did with a student, a middle school student who was afraid to go to school, had been bullied, smart kid. What's funny, she was worried that kids would look at her. And I kind of said, "You've got blue hair. They're going to look at you." And so we laughed about that. And the other thing that I thought was funny is, I kind of said there, this is gentle cognitive reframing is what I'm saying. Everybody's gonna look at me. Well, of course they are, because you got blue hair. And then the other thing is like, well, how many of those kids walking down the hall do you think are thinking the same thing that you're thinking? Everybody's looking at me. And she's like, oh yeah, I bet that's probably the case. So everybody's anxious about this. So you can use fun and humor and loving approaches to support kids around this. So this is kind of, the students' baseline was really being in the office with a paraeducator working 2 hours a day. This is a kid who never went to school, and so at least we got her at 2 hours a day with a para working with that person to do some catch-up work and work on Apex and things like that. So we did the imaginal exposure about going to the classroom. She was able to do that for a period of time. And then we went to the teacher's classroom, but avoided the windows so that this was when no students were in the hall. And then we did with the students in the hall, and then we went into the classroom to talk with the teacher, or went to the classroom and talked with the teacher in the hall for 1 to 2 minutes. And I had set this all up ahead of time with the teacher, or into the room and sit in the back of that. She was able to successfully kind of get through these. We had some backslides because of breaks, and I think we ended over the summer, and I think she ended up moving, unfortunately. But we did show some initial successes. I have also worked with students where it was complete success. Where, I mean, one of my favorite stories, and actually, Tammy Hebrandt, one of our wonderful behavior techs, worked with a student, and he was in the conference room all day, just doing nothing in the dark. And we started doing exposure with him. And by the end of the year, he was attending class full time. He ended up being class president at one point, and is now in college and doing really well. So parents were extremely supportive and had a lot of supports in place. But, I think that we definitely helped out.
Jared,
Yeah.
do you want to, Tom said, what is Apex? Do you want to explain that, or would you like me to?
Why don't you do it? I'd love it for you.
Sure. Apex is it's an online learning program, and Sally Sue, jump into, because I know you know Apex pretty well. So for some students who aren't able to sit in a traditional classroom to get their credits, it's like an online learning program that some students use. And I believe you can do either credit recovery or get original credits through Apex, but it's Apex is usually not considered for students unless they try kind of general classes first in a typical in-person setting. So yeah, it's basically online learning in a nutshell, and I can drop our website as well.
Do you know if Digital Discovery does some of that, or if it's different?
They have their own curriculum.
Yeah, they don't use Apex at all. No.
Okay.
Yep.
I know Rise does, Rise and Summit to some extent, and I'll talk a bit about Rise and Summit in a few minutes. But they use those programs. So what can you do at home? What are some things to do to help? Reward approaching anxiety situations. Really love your kids when they try to make an attempt. Even if they fail, at least they tried. And if you keep reinforcing that, the next time they might succeed. So that's important. And avoiding rescuing. A lot of, when I heard, so there was going to be I don't know if it actually happened, but it was in the state legislature where they wanted to include a mental health day for kids. And I think for kids who are normally functioning, that's not a problem. But for kids who are constantly refusing school, it's a really bad idea because it's kind of rescuing kids from going to school. School refusal is a significant issue for a number of students, and rescuing might look like having kids stay home when they say they feel ill. And so, for normal kids, for kids who don't have school refusal, that's fine. It's not going to affect them. But what happens, we develop these patterns, and it just reinforces that kind of, if they're avoiding school out of fear. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why to avoid school, but fear is a significant one. Then what it does is that avoidance just kind of reinforces the fear and the behaviors, and so you kind of build up multiple days of school refusal. Um, Validated anxiety. Oh, this is also really important. Um, Sometimes the anxiety seems completely irrational. Um, I, I'm trying to draw on my parent, database of things that my kids have been afraid of. I can't think of anything at the moment, but I'm sure as parents you've seen some pretty irrational fears. Um, it's important to validate the anxiety and not dismiss it, but also give them hope as like, we can work through this. So you may be afraid of this situation, of talking to that teacher, or to doing that assignment, or doing that thing that's really hard. Um, and a lot of people don't feel that, but you do, and that's okay. But we still want to try, that type of thing. So you're validating, you're not dismissing it, but you're also saying, here's the expectation that I would like to see, and then setting contingencies. And what I mean by contingencies is reinforcing situations, or to kind of reinforce the approach towards that. Sleep habits. Yeah.
I was just going to say real quick, I think some people confused validation with kind of agreeing, but it's not that. If your child is saying, I have a fear of this, and some people might think it'd be helpful to say, but don't be scared of that. You don't have a reason to be scared of that, but instead asking questions and just repeating, I hear you're scared. Doesn't mean that you're agreeing that they should be, but showing just more of an empathetic response.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's totally exactly right. Like, or if they're saying, "Hey, I don't want to go to school because I have a stomach ache." Yeah, I know that's it. Stomach is really hard. I bet you're afraid of going to school. That's really hard, but you still need to go to school. And if there's anything I can do to help, short of keeping you home, let me know. If you want to stop and get a treat along the way, maybe that might help settle your stomach, things like that. That's fine. But got to still hold that line, but do it in a loving way. And sometimes as parents, when we're stressed, we're trying to get to work, we're late, we're under a lot of pressure, it's hard to give a loving response. Believe me. Yeah, it is hard. So, sleep habits. Oh, yes. So, regarding school avoidance, is it better for the child to stay at the school counseling office? Yes. Um, you may get pushback from the school counselors and the school around this. But yes, it is. And to me, what send them Adria's name or my name, and we'll be happy to talk to the school counselor. Most school teams understand it. Occasionally, occasionally you'll get some pushback, or people will say, "Hey, we need to come up with a better plan." But thanks, Jen. Have a good night. But yes, definitely, because picking up your kid, unless it's a true, unless it's a true illness or emergency or something like that, it just reinforces the avoidance behaviors. And there are plans. Adrian, I'm sure, has made many plans for students who are refusing to go to class. I have as well. There are other people in the district as well. If they don't have people at the school that can support you around that and support your student, there's definitely ways of doing that. So, good question. Let's see here. Let's go. How much time do we have? We still have a little bit. Here's some other kind of strategies as well. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other ones in more detail. Again, humor is always good, non-humiliating, kind of self-deprecating. Sometimes I find it helps. Stonewalling is, it's one thing to say, hey, I'm overloaded right now and I can't talk. I'll talk to you in a few minutes. That's okay. But just refusing to talk about issues when you're frustrated, I think is unhelpful. It's not good modeling for students as well. Distractions, appropriately, distractions can get really, you can get mired in kind of distractions. I think there's a term of doom scrolling, is what I've heard kids say, where they just keep scrolling and doing and looking through everything. So sometimes using, devices as distractions cannot be good. Exercise, one of the best antidepressants around. Even just going for a short walk, those types of things. Limit screen time. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Establishing routines is extremely important. Ambiguity, not knowing what's happening, what's going to go on, having downtime leads to a lot of anxious thoughts. It opens the mind towards kind of ruminating and thinking about and perseverating on bad things that have happened or worrying about bad things that could happen. And active listening and validation. I think that's what Adria was talking about, is really, listening, kind of repeating back a little bit or summarizing what you've heard from your child and giving, validating the emotion, not necessarily the behavior. I think that's also what we teach people, is that the behavior may not be appropriate, and I think it's okay to say that, but the anger and frustration behind it is always reasonable as well. So good sleep habits. I do have a cat here. I love this one. This is a very sleepy cat. Aim for 9.5 hours. Regular sleep and wake times, relaxation strategies are really helpful. Doing them together sometimes is really a nice bedtime routine. Even sometimes, teenagers will sometimes do that. My kids will sometimes ask, hey, can we do the sleepy toast? Okay, sure. Creating the right conditions, no napping, bedroom is for sleeping, not having, big raucous parties in there. Caffeine, avoiding caffeine, that's another one. Don't try to sleep. That's a kind of a, it seems kind of oxymoronic in the sense that when people, when they get anxious about, it's basically being anxious about not being able to fall asleep. What they usually say is, if you're getting frustrated that you're not going to sleep, get up, get a glass of water, sit in the couch for a little bit, try another 15-20 minutes. That's the strategy. Some settling down rituals, are oftentimes fun. Reading a book for a few minutes. Sometimes, I don't know what people do. A lot of things. I generally don't have trouble sleeping. I used to, but I don't. And then healthy and exercise, eating healthy and exercise. I'm going to skip that one. Screen time. This is also really important because what happens is a lot of kids with anxiety will use screens to manage their emotions, their anxiety. And if you haven't noticed, a lot of our social media, a lot of our games, a lot of the, internet apps and things like that are built to capture our attention. And there's actually some dopamine rushes and the neurotransmitters in the brain that happen that actually it's almost like addiction in many ways. Literally, computer companies and software designers have designed it to really pull viewers in. So it's really important to kind of break that cycle. And so setting kind of screen-free zones. And yes, I did. So I put an email to the parents attending or put in. So I did earlier give the. I can put it in again. It's in the chat. There's a link here. I think there you go. That should be the link there. So it should be in that drive. Let me know if you can't access it as well. So anyway, there are different kind of ways of doing that at home. What we do, yeah, you're welcome, Ted. We have a central charging station where all of our devices go at night to go to bed, so to speak. My wife has put, she's really good at this. She's put controls on the kids' devices so that by, I think they're older. Well, one's in college now, so we don't do that. But the other one is younger, and by like 11 o'clock, her phone or her data is kind of disconnected. I'm trying to remember exactly what happens. She can still listen to music on her device, but she can't use any internet or anything like that. It was as she was younger, it was earlier, so 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or something like that. But
Yeah, my daughters have the Amazon Fire tablet, and you can set times for it where after an hour, it just everything shuts off. You can even set it so books are always available on the tablets.
Yeah, I have definitely heard of kids that are extremely tech savvy who've been able to figure out how to hack these things. So this is not a panacea, or this doesn't work for every situation, but for many kids, if you've got a situation like that, then that could certainly be a consulting with more help, getting more help in that situation. Anything like there's Circle Go, I guess, is a good one. I haven't used that one, but definitely can be helpful as well. Okay. What else here? Here's some books, the parent tools and resources. Getting your child to say yes to school is great. Christopher Kearney is one of the leading researchers in school refusal. He has a lot of great ideas. The CBT toolbox for children and adolescents is a great resource as well. And then, for obsessive compulsive, even though it's for obsessive compulsive disorder, it does work with students who have some general anxiety, because there's a lot of features around that as well. Those are some good, but these are just some samples. There's a bunch of others out there as well. This website is amazing. It is primarily for therapists. However, it's free, and anyone can use the materials in there. And there's some amazing materials. It is quite rich. Let me see if I can get let me grab the. I could put the. Let me see if I can get the. I'll get the website eventually and put it in the chat there. But there's lots of other things there. There's a lot of apps out there. Mood meter, something that's great. Oops. Virtual Hope Box, 1 minute of meditation. CBTI is another one. It's CBT for insomnia. Is another great application. Medications can be helpful as well. And one of the last sessions we had, parent asked, when do you consider medications? And I tend the general rule is that if you should try least intensive interventions first. So talk therapy, behavioral therapy, things like that. You want to try and use those first. The other thing that I really talked about with parents is that you are the client, or the child is the customer. And so if your student does not like the therapist or doesn't find that it's helpful, find somebody else. You be a shopper. Really stress that. You want to find someone that you feel comfortable with, what the student feels comfortable with. And it may take 3 or 4 people to get to as well. So, oh, thanks. Okay, hey, you're here. You're on. I didn't know you were here. So yeah, Kay posted that. Thank you, Kay. That's the link to the CBT Plus notebook. So medication. So anyway, try all of those things first. If 6 months or so you're not seeing the success that you want, and the therapist is connecting with the student and you're just not seeing it, and it's pretty significant, or if quality of life is just going down, then that's the time to try medications. And doctors often start low and slow is the strategy. They'll start with low doses and go kind of slow. Just talk a little bit about some basic ways that what some initiatives the schools have. So there's a lot of basic services that all schools have, lots of clubs, organization, and activities. Even though they're not mental health based, they provide connection with kids. and with adults, positive connections in adults, and it's really important. We are in the process of adopting a new social emotional learning platform or curriculum. I'm part of that committee, and we've narrowed it down to 3 at this point, and so we're going to start piloting those. There are standards at the secondary level of expectations, but it's not hasn't been as adopted yet, and it's been as widespread as we'd like to see. At the elementary, we do have Second Step and Ruler, and they're great. They're great programs as well. We also have Right Response for staff, and I believe, Adria, you are the lead of that, right? Is that right?
Yes. So right response is de-escalation, really understanding behavior and how to help support students who are having challenging behaviors and often result in some unsafe behaviors. So I'm really, what I like about right response is 90% of it is all preventative. And I even actually just got a request from some general education teachers who would like the de-escalation training. So yeah, we're excited about that.
It's a great program. I used to be a trainer years ago, and it's really helpful for a lot of staff as well. There's just some basic counseling services. So brief intervention for school. Many of our school counselors have been trained in the BRISC. It's like 4-session counseling, or it's kind of solution. They call it solution focused counseling. They kind of talk about a specific issue, they problem solve around it, and then they do kind of checkups around that. We are starting to get more small group interventions using a program called Trails, which is a CBT based group therapy. We're just starting to get that off the ground a little bit more at selected schools as well. The team that I lead is the mental health assistance team. That is, we have 2 mental health counselors at each high school, and 1 at each middle and choice school. And then we have 3.5 FTE at the elementary level. The elementary is more coaching and consultation, but the MHAT counselors at the secondary level do provide short-term direct counseling, individual and group counseling as well. We have some community agencies, mental health agencies, and I'll show those in just a minute. And then we're also right in the middle of right now, just starting up in a little bit, a parent group for students. It's for the parents, but this is for parents that have students with school refusal as well. It's about a 8 to 10 week group that I lead with. The main leader is Alyssa Symes, who's a psychologist in the district. 504 plans are really helpful for accommodating students who have needs around anxiety or other mental health challenges. If you have questions about that, if your students in receiving special education, a 504 would not be applicable, but the accommodations and things like that supporting anxiety would definitely be part of the IEP, and you can access those through the school counselor. I did mention earlier RISE and Summit. RISE is for students that have high level of anxiety or are not able to come to school at all. And so it's housed at Highland. So is for students who are not able to go to their own school. And there's some basic agreements about how much Glenn Hasslinger is the director of that program. And he basically asks kids, well, here's the minimum requirement of time. It's like, I think it's like 4 hours a week. If kids can agree to that, then the goal is to kind of slowly increase that. And they use Apex as an online learning tool. Summit, there's a Summit teacher at every high school, comprehensive high school. So International does not have one, and I don't think Big Picture does. But the Summit room and the Summit teacher is for students that have challenges, anxiety, or other types of challenges with being in class on a consistent basis. So it's kind of like a home room or home base for students that are just get overwhelmed in the class and just can't handle a full day. but can do some work in the classroom as well. So they will do that. I think of special education. So when it comes to anxiety and things like that, there's a lot of modifications that can be done to support kids. Visual schedules can help, shorten work, cue cards, the high school level providing, note cards for tests, things like that. Choices of activities to do instead of like writing or things like that. If writing is not the main objective, but showing knowledge of a certain topic like U.S. history or the history of World War One, talking to the teacher about it in person rather than writing a story. That might be, or writing an essay, excuse me, about it. That's definitely one approach. Again, there might be different levels of reading materials for the same topic as well that student can access. A lot of goals that are specifically especially designed instruction, motion regulation strategies such as deep breathing or relaxation, things like that. Taking a break, asking for help, ending school class. Those are all common ones. Supplementary aids and services for students that have more significant needs. We do have social worker support that's usually accessed through requesting that through the MDT or the IEP team as well. That's kind of based on an as needed basis, and they might do an assessment to kind of figure out the needs. Other things that we've done, I've supported students when I was working in the special education department with exposure plans, functional behavior assessment, and behavior intervention plans are very common. And I've got only about 5 more minutes. I'm going to skip a couple of things here because I want to show some specific initiatives. Community supports. We have partnerships with Sound Youth Services, Consejo, Agent Counseling Referral Service, and CMAR. All of our high schools and middle schools have somebody from one of these agencies in their building to provide support for students if they want confidential services through that. And so we've had great partnerships with them, and they're awesome. We also provide the Signs of Suicide lesson. I send out, you may have received an email from me at some point or another. I lead the team that does this. We have a suicide coordinator, Signs of Suicide coordinator. Her name's Lane Barker. She's wonderful and does this as well, but I support this. And it's a program that we do in the classroom to kind of do suicide prevention as well. Always like to include the crisis support services. If anybody's having any challenges, want to make sure that people know that that's there. CORE's Community Crisis Outreach Services is a great agency for people for families, for students who don't have services in place but might need that. And then the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a great service as well. This wraparound services is really helpful. This is sometimes when you get multiple agencies involved, you might have the school, you might have, Division of Child and Family Services, you might have a hospital, children's involved, you might have pediatricians involved. It's really hard to coordinate all those people and get everybody on the same page and communicating with each other. And so this is a voluntary service for parents and students, where we can, work with an outside agency, somebody from Sound or YES or Child Haven, most likely Sound or YES, where they can have a person whose job is to kind of help coordinate all the services so that people are communicating and providing a really good wraparound support for students. And then there's some great private agencies in the area. I've worked quite a bit with Evidence-Based Treatment Centers of Seattle. Jennifer Tinenenko is the director of the Anxiety Clinic. She's wonderful. I've had several students go there, and they've done amazing work with students. Rogers, I actually know somebody there. She's amazing there. She started that program here. Zero Health is great for a lot of eating disorders, depression, other co-occurring conditions, particularly for girls or gender non-conforming individuals. They're amazing as well. Overlake Specialty School is more specialized, a little bit different. And then Children's Long-Term Inpatient Program, or CLIP, is really the most significant support system in place in the state as well, kind of residential care.
Jared, we're hitting the 7:30 mark.
We are.
We are.
That's
I
it.
wanna,
Hey, you know what? Q&A. I can
Q&A?
skip this one. Yeah, I can skip this one. So yeah, I
Can-
get 1 minute for Q&A. No, I'm sorry.
Okay, can I put two things in the chat while you're doing the Q&A?
Yes, yeah.
What our next session is and the feedback form. So you do the Q&A, I'm gonna put those in the chat.
Okay. So Tom, do you have a similar program at Tyee Middle School? I'm not sure which program. I wasn't paying attention.
I
you
think that
mind-
came up when you were talking about MHAT counselors.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we have at specifically helping kids with anxiety. Yes. Emily Roydance is the counselor, MHAT counselor at Tyee. And so she's wonderful as well. I don't know what other questions you might have. Great. Yeah, you can, if you're interested in MHAT, there are some conditions to where it might be appropriate and where it might not be. So if you have any questions, if it's good, because it is short-term counseling, it's not long-term counseling. The social workers are generally for long-term counseling. They're through the special education department. But if you have any questions about that, talk to the school counselor at your school. You can just mention MHAT. You can talk about school council, social workers, and they will kind of know how to kind of get you get information to you about how to access those services or if they're appropriate. There any other? Let me go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen. There we go.
So I get to wrap it up. And Adrian and Jared, thank you so much. We so appreciate you. You guys are always at the top of our list to get you in here for this really important group of older kids, for sure. So thank you. Thank you for your time and
You're welcome.
Wonderful information and your willingness to be open to further questions, because I think that's really appreciative to parents in the community. So hey, our next session, it's a DDA workshop. I highly recommend, whether you think DDA is something that your child will need at this point or going to need it in the future. Trust me, you're going to want to hear from DDA more than once, because it's a little bit overwhelming and it's a little bit confusing. So I've been going to them many, many times, and I learn more and more every time I go. So I put the link for DSHS. It describes what DDA is and who it serves. And that is December 6th. The last thing is the feedback form. If you could give us some information on what else you would like, we would be so very, very grateful. We appreciate parents' time, and we want to make sure it's valuable for you as we work with the our parent group that assists us. So that's it for us tonight. And again, everyone, thank you for joining us. Jared, Adria, you guys are amazing, as always.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks again. This recording will be on the thing. I don't think I can turn it off, though. I think we all have
Sally?
to get off. Yeah?
Hello?
Yes.
I'm unable to get to the chat. Is there an email that can be put up or sent? I don't know.
Yeah.
My chat